Welcome to Labor Day Storytime, presented by Mayworks. My name's Saku, and I'm going to be doing a reading of The True Cost of Coal, which is a rhyming story about the history of coal mining in Appalachia. And it's based on this graphic that you see behind me, done by the Beehive Design Collective. I'm also part of the Beehive Design Collective. So before I dive into the story, I want to go through some of the concepts in this story that are described actually in the back of the story in the activity section. So the first thing to know about this graphic is that it's about mountaintop removal coal mining. Now, mountaintop removal coal mining is a form of strip mining where they dynamite the tops off mountains, and then they use this huge machine called a dragline to scrape the seams of coal. Now, this machine is 22 stories high, but it only takes 3 people to operate. And that's how they got rid of about 90% of the workforce in Appalachia while upping the destruction tenfold. So, while they needed less workers to extract the coal, with these huge machines and dynamite, they were able to destroy mountains much more quickly than they ever had before. But our story doesn't start with where we are today with this form of extreme extraction. This story tells a history beginning with the creation of coal and going up through the colonization of the land. So here you can see the colonization is represented by these European starling birds, which is an invasive species that came from Europe. And the reason that we chose it to represent colonization is because starlings are known for kicking native birds out of their nests. Here we can see the starlings are bringing their young, their farming techniques, their culture and music and religion. And this one has chains to represent that some settlers were also fleeing forms of repression. But over here we have the more violent aspects of colonization. Smallpox blanket to represent the spread of disease. This starling bird kicking a native bird out of its nest as a metaphor for land theft. And here we have this religious bird that's taking the young, and that's a reference to the targeted assimilation of native children through residential schools. Now, another major concept that we go through is the union movement. And so the main struggle of the union movement during this time was for the right to form a union. And for those curious, unions are democratic organizations of workers who come together to make decisions about the conditions of their work and fight to improve their lives through collective bargaining and direct action. Coming together with a unified voice is powerful when asking for more from your bosses. And with a union, workers can collectively decide to stop working, called a strike, until their demands are met. The union movement is credited with winning workers the 8-hour workday, weekends off work, and other benefits such as safer working conditions, health benefits, and better wages. So I think we're ready to start the story. What do you guys think? Okay, let's go. Our story begins with the creation of coal in the ancient marshlands and the forests of old. The plants that lived there never got to decay. Instead, their carbon was buried away. The original people, they lived with the land. They took from it too, but they worked it by hand. This method did limit how much they could take, which worked out much better for everyone's sake. Then the colonists came, bringing their baggage. They brought disease too and did lots of damage. Treaties were signed by the Cherokee chiefs to keep land for their nation to live on in peace. And although the U.S. signed these treaties before, the settlers were greedy. They still wanted more. The treaties they tore, people's rights they ignored, while the Cherokee Phoenix would report and record. And the Cherokee Phoenix was a bilingual newspaper written in Cherokee and English that spread the news of the Cherokee resistance to forced relocation. The Cherokee written language was invented by a Cherokee man named Sequoyah, less than a decade before their forced removal. They petitioned, protested, and sued in the courts, but the U.S. president removed them by force. They walked through the winter with so little food. Many died on the journey. They cried as they moved. The Cherokee, along with the Choctaw, Seminole, Creek, and Chickasaw nations, were forced to make a new home in Oklahoma, and their trek was known as the Trail of Tears, in which over 4,000 of them died. Their forests cut down, train tracks stretched for miles, coal, cotton, and lumber to make money piles. Wanting homes and employment, the settler moved west and got trapped in the company towns with their debts. Workers weren't paid in money, just company scrip that they had to give back for their food and their rent. Enough was enough. The miners fought back. They picked up their guns and they launched an attack. They wore red bandanas. They shut down the mines. They went out on strike and they held picket lines. The government sided with bosses, of course, and they sent in the army to use lethal force. Of course, that's a reference to one of the largest labor struggles fought in U.S. history, known as the Battle of Blair Mountain. It saw over 12,000 miners march on the seat of coal company power in armed resistance to repressive, militarized, and unsafe working conditions. In retaliation, the coal operators summoned the U.S. National Guard to quell the uprising. But the plight of the workers would soon get much better. They sang with their union, solidarity forever. But as soon as things moved in the working man's favor, a monster appeared and replaced most of their labor. A continuous miner crushed coal in their lives, so the community as a whole had to get organized. They picketed and lobbied, even broke those machines, but at the movement's peak got sold out by big greens. Rather than stopping the mechanization, these green groups just pushed for mere regulation. Mountains got destroyed more than ever before, and those miners, they couldn't find work anymore. So this is a reference to the 1970s when big green groups, such as the Sierra Club and Environmental Policy Center, used their lobbying power to push for the regulation of mountaintop removal coal mining, rather than an abolition bill. This resulted in the passage of the Surface Mine Control Reclamation Act, which the big greens celebrated, but coalfield residents and regional environmental groups called a blatant travesty and a betrayal. This legislation worked to legitimize strip mining and made the goal of abolition unattainable. The machines just got meaner and badder and bigger. The people got poorer and sadder and sicker. The coal fueled the wars and consumption and greed. The climate was changing to chaos with speed. But the rich just got richer. As coal smoke filled the sky, they made inside deals that would keep profits high. It was clear to the people who watched from below that they'd have to rise up and resist and say no. They passed out petitions and signed with their paws. They held up the permits by studying laws. They tested the waters, the coal trucks they blocked. They made painted banners and rallied a lot. Some people resisted while others rebuilt the local economy, the soil and the silt. They cleaned up the toxins with mushrooms and plants, built kitchens and gardens, wrote music and danced. The fences came down, First Peoples reclaimed the land they'd been missing, traditions and ways. All peoples united, the monster was dead. There's wind, sun, and currents that we use instead. Seeds to be saved, rainwater to collect, and community was built around love and respect. The people in cities kept busy and buzzing, but now they were working together on something. They built housing collectives, made better decisions, and figured out life without coal or emissions. We all have a role when we build from below. How will you help your community grow?